Tonight, the final hours until Election Day. The candidates in the battlegrounds on the last day of the campaign. Donald Trump holding 5 rallies in 4 states. Joe Biden concentrating on critical Pennsylvania. Our new poll, where the race there stands. The clash over Dr. Fauci, the president suggesting he could fire him after the election. And what the president is saying in defense of supporters who swarmed a Biden campaign bus. Also, with nearly 100 million early votes already cast, could it be an election night cliffhanger? The states where we could know first and where it could take days, even months. The president already threatening legal action to stop the count. On the eve of the election, COVID surging to all-time highs, nearly 100,000 cases in a day. Hospitals warning they may ration care. El Paso calling in a 4th mobile morgue, and massive parties over the weekend. Could they have been super spreaders? The deadly terror attack near a synagogue in Vienna. Shootouts in the streets. What we're now learning. Tensions running high, businesses boarded up ahead of potential unrest. How to deal with your election anxiety. And 3 days after that powerful earthquake, the miracle rescues.
This is NBC Nightly News. Decision 2020. Here is Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. Here we are now, just hours from Election Day 2020. As the nation closes in on 100 million early votes cast, Donald Trump and Joe Biden are tonight surgically trying to pick off the states that could push them over the line. Biden tonight, according to polls, holding a lead in key battleground states, but the margins are narrow. The president looking to close ground with a final pitch grounded in grievances and doubt about the election process itself. We have it all covered. Let's begin our coverage with Jeff Bennett. And Jeff, what is the president hoping for in these final hours?
Lester, President Trump's campaign is counting on a surge in Election Day turnout among his supporters to fuel the president's path to re-election. His campaign drawing confidence from the size of his crowds, despite polling showing him behind. President Trump crisscrossing the country tonight to close out the 2020 campaign.
North Carolina, thank you very much. We win Pennsylvania, we win the whole deal. You know that, huh?
By the end of the night, the president will have logged nearly 2,500 miles, with rallies in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Battlegrounds he won in 2016, but where polls say the race is either tight or he's trailing. Part of the president's closing argument, a threat to fire Dr. Anthony Fauci.
Don't tell anybody, but let me wait till a little bit after the election.
That's after Fauci told the Washington Post about the pandemic. The Biden campaign is taking it seriously from a public health perspective, while the president's focus is reopening the country. Back on the trail, the president teeing up uncertainty over the election outcome, pushing the false argument that results not declared on election night are illegitimate.
We should know the result of the election on November 3rd, the evening of November 3rd. That's the way it's been, and that's the way it should be.
All that as the FBI tells NBC News it's investigating after Trump supporters surrounded a Biden campaign bus in Texas Friday. The president insisting his supporters were being helpful, not threatening.
Do you see the way our people, they were protecting his bus yesterday?
The president tweeting today they did nothing wrong. Republican Senator Marco Rubio backing him up.
Did you see it? All the cars on the road with the... We love what they did.
A Biden campaign official says the vehicles tried to run the bus off the road. Tensions high as the president fights to the final moment to secure a second term. Jeff Bennett, NBC News, Traverse City, Michigan.
I'm Kristen Welker. Tonight, Joe Biden closing out his campaign in battleground Pennsylvania, appearing with Lady Gaga.
You guys can own this election.
After hitting the key state of Ohio and again blasting the president over his handling of COVID-19 and the president's suggestion he may fire Dr. Anthony Fauci.
I got a better idea. Elect me and I'm going to hire Dr. Fauci. And we're going to fire Donald Trump.
Biden making 4 stops in Pennsylvania today, Kamala Harris with 5, while former President Obama going to Georgia and Florida to try to energize Black and Latino voters with turnout in some areas below expectations.
Tomorrow, after 4 years of failure, You have the power to change America.
But Pennsylvania will be key, and the polls here are tightening. Our new NBC News Marist poll showing Biden's lead shrinking to just 5 points, which is within the margin of error. Meanwhile, President Trump drawing tens of thousands of supporters to rallies here. Pennsylvania's Democratic Lieutenant Governor tweeting a photo of one packed Trump rally, warning Democrats that's not Photoshop. The president is popular in PA, urging them to vote, tweeting, "Bank your ballot." We spoke to critical voters in the Philadelphia suburbs, including supporters of the president. What is the biggest issue for you?
Economy, really.
You think he's done a good job on the economy?
I do, yeah, absolutely.
And Biden. Why Biden and Harris?
Because of what's going on in the world, the divisiveness, trying to entice the hateness, and it's just horrible. We need a change. The people are suffering.
And Kristen joined me now. Kristen, what expectations are the Biden campaign setting tonight?
Well, Lester, the Biden campaign insists Pennsylvania is not must win for them, but they are fighting so hard here because it is very difficult for President Trump to win re-election without winning Pennsylvania again. Biden will be back here tomorrow. Lester.
All right, Kristen, thanks very much. And we know that counting the vote might take days in some places, and state laws permit that. But as you heard, President Trump again suggested that counting should stop tomorrow. Tom Costello tonight with a reality check.
Never in the country's history has a winner been formally declared the night of the election. But with record numbers of voters, President Trump on Sunday falsely claimed votes should not be counted after Tuesday.
I think it's a terrible thing when people or states are allowed to tabulate ballots for a long period of time after the election is over.
But counting takes time, days, even weeks. And the president surely knows that. Here are the facts. 21 states and D.C. allow ballots postmarked by Election Day to be counted if they arrive after Election Day, including critical swing states Pennsylvania, Minnesota, North Carolina, and Ohio. But tonight, a big concern. The Postal Service, accused of slowing mail delivery to help President Trump, reports that on Saturday it moved only 62% of mailed-in ballots on time in central Pennsylvania and 64% in Atlanta, compared to a 95% overall on-time delivery in June. Some states are already counting millions of early votes, including Florida, Arizona, and North Carolina. Other battlegrounds like Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania can't begin counting until tomorrow. Pennsylvania's governor out with a new commercial trying to reassure voters.
It may take a little longer than we're used to, even a few days, but that's okay, because it's critical that your vote is counted.
Even veteran Republicans are concerned by the president's rhetoric.
Look, I'm a Republican. I agree with the president when he's right, but he's wrong about this. This type of rhetoric about rigged elections ultimately invites comparison to places like Russia, to places like Iran, places where they really do rig elections.
In fact, every state has its own deadline for certifying election results. The real deadline, December 14th. That's when state electors must cast their ballots in the Electoral College. Experts caution as states come in tomorrow night, they may trend blue or red, but all that matters is the final vote count, and they could all change their colors. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello, thanks. Let's bring in our political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Chuck, how do these two candidates reach the prize, 270 electoral votes?
Well, in theory, there's a ton of ways for them to get there, but what we're really figuring out, there's really just two paths. There's a northern path and a southern path here. Watch our bars here as I move these states. For now, we're going to assume that Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan go Democrat. We're going to put Iowa and Ohio in the Republican column. And look what that leaves us here. You've got these 5 Sun Belt states plus Pennsylvania. And look at the importance of the Sun Belt to Donald Trump. Just one win by Biden, and he hits 270 or more. Arizona would do it. Texas would do it. Florida would do it. Georgia would do it. Or North Carolina would do it. Just one. But if the president holds all the Sun Belt, then where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with Pennsylvania. And if you're trying to figure out why there's so much threat of lawsuit about Pennsylvania, is because they've done this path too. They've done these paths too. And each side gets stuck at times with the 20 electoral votes in Pennsylvania, Lester.
All right, Chuck, thanks very much. And for voters, the pandemic is front and center as it continues to explode across the country yet again, ravaging families and pushing hospitals to the brink. Here's Miguel Almaguer now on the alarming surge.
As our nation approaches a staggering 100,000 new infections a day, hospitals in states like Utah, overwhelmed by a flood of COVID cases, say they may have to soon ration care. In Wisconsin, where the positivity rate is roughly 30%, retired healthcare workers are being asked to return to the front lines. For nurses and doctors inside this ICU in South Dakota, every statistic is a patient. Deaths in this state have risen 52%.
As we're all trying to keep our cool on the outside, on the inside, we're like, got so many patients I need to see.
With the city of El Paso receiving its 4th mobile morgue after a surge in fatalities, scenes like these showing thousands partying on Halloween have first responders outraged. But smaller events, like a gathering inside a Vermont hockey rink, also have led to at least 89 infections, now spread across 18 towns. In St. Louis, LaWanda Griffin survived the virus, but lost her mother and 2 great uncles to COVID.
Oh, that was the hardest thing.
On election eve, the pandemic and politics are colliding at polling sites. Experts say voting in person is as safe, if not safer, than going to the grocery store. Lester?
All right, Miguel, thank you. Breaking tonight, what authorities are calling a deadly terror attack in Vienna, Austria, that began near the city's central synagogue. Richard Engel now with late details.
Police engaged in a gun battle in central Vienna tonight and came under fire themselves. Police say several gunmen, you can see them here, dressed in white, carrying rifles, opened fire in 6 different locations. Austria's chancellor calling it a terror attack. The shootings were centered around the city's main synagogue, closed at the time. The area is also full of bars and restaurants, crowded tonight before a COVID lockdown begins tomorrow.
People were sitting outside and he was shooting at the people.
Tensions were already high as jihadist attacks are on the rise in Europe, including just last week in France. Lester?
Disturbing developments. All right, Richard, thank you. Tonight, President Trump is holding a rally in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where protests erupted after the police shooting of Jacob Blake in August. Now it's looking more like this election could be won or lost in suburbs like Kenosha. But is the president's law and order message resonating with voters? Here's Gabe Gutierrez with that.
Tonight in battleground Wisconsin, the fight for the suburbs is underway. President Trump rallying supporters in Kenosha. More than 2 months since the unrest following the police shooting of Jacob Blake.
What happened to downtown Kenosha happened to me in my backyard. Had law and order been called in sooner, probably we would not have lost lives.
In his battleground blitz over the last week, the president has been hammering home his campaign theme of law and order.
Antifa and the anarchists, they view the suburbs as next.
I'm saving suburbia. We believe in law and order. Suburban women, please love me, please love me.
In 2016, suburban women supported Hillary Clinton over Mr. Trump by 11 points. A recent poll has Joe Biden up 19 points among the same group.
The simple truth is, Donald Trump failed to protect America. So now he's trying to scare America.
Across the country, major cities are preparing for potential violence after the election, from New York to Philadelphia to Los Angeles. Even the White House plans to install a non-scalable fence. In Kenosha, downtown businesses have been boarded up for months.
What worries you most about the president being reelected?
Basically, the last 4 years happening again. He's not trustworthy.
4 years ago, President Trump won Wisconsin by less than 23,000 votes. Even though he trails in the polls here, his supporters warn not to count him out again. Lester?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez in Kenosha, thank you. Another all-important block of voters, African Americans, with the number of black Americans eligible to vote reaching a record 30 million this year. NBC's Blaine Alexander on some of what's weighing into that critical vote.
There's the South Carolina Biden supporter with everything on the line.
Our livelihoods, our well-being, our everyday is at stake in this election. You know, people say, well, vote like your life depends on it. No, we're voting because our lives depend on it.
The first-time voter in Minnesota working to get out the vote for President Trump.
I am a conservative because I am Christian. And as of right now, my political affiliations or my views align with the Republican Party.
And the Georgia voter, driven by two things.
Racial tensions and the pandemic.
And that's what's bringing you out to vote.
Yes.
Now both parties are scrambling to court that crucial black vote.
Black lives matter, period.
To every black American, vote for Trump.
More than a third of America's black voters live in some of the country's most competitive states, including Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio.
And the biggest concentration is right here in Georgia, where black voters comprise 32% of the electorate.
I wanted just to come out and just do what I can.
With 30 million eligible black voters, more than ever before, they could sway the election, particularly in those swing states. It's why Kayla Bino spent $600 to fly from Baltimore to Fort Lauderdale when her Florida absentee ballot didn't show up.
I would not have been able to forgive myself if I didn't vote in this election. I honestly feel that the stakes are far too high to be complacent.
Now, all eyes are on Tuesday and turnout. Blaine Alexander, NBC News, Atlanta.
In just 60 seconds, election stress disorder. Yes, it's a real thing. We're going to tell you how to recognize it, how to deal with it. With just hours until the polls open, there are a lot of Americans feeling it tonight. Election anxiety. Stephanie Goss now, and what you can do to cope with it.
The election is coming at us fast and at times angry. The campaigns, the ads, the Twitter feeds, polls and pundits, and finger wagging. No peace! No justice! No peace! The voting lines are long and there are fears of unrest. All of it while the pandemic only gets worse. No wonder there is more stress than ever.
I'm seeing a tremendous amount of people dealing with stress, anxiety, panic-type symptoms as the election gets closer.
Doctors even have a name for it: election stress disorder. Take a deep breath. There are ways to make it better. Limit social media and TV, avoid political conversations that can sometimes get ugly, and get some exercise. A walk can do wonders. Psychologists say look for signs that you may need more help, having trouble getting out of bed or not eating. Doctors and therapists are doing more virtual visits, making it safer and easier to schedule appointments. Finally, resist the urge to worry about what can't be controlled or what hasn't happened. Instead, go vote. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
All right, up next, will Americans trust the election results? The incredible moment caught on camera. Rescuers pulling a 3-year-old girl out alive after she was trapped for 3 days in the rubble from that deadly earthquake in Turkey. Workers calling it a miracle. Also rescued today, a 14-year-old girl. Back home, as millions get ready to head to the polls just hours from now, an alarming number of Americans are losing faith in the country's election system. Cynthia McFadden now on why trust is plummeting and what can be done about it.
The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged.
Is by the chicanery going on relative to polling places.
Little surprise, perhaps, the nation's trust in our voting system at the core of the American democracy is at an all-time low. Polls show over 40% of Americans are not confident the election results will be counted accurately.
I just don't feel like our votes matter. You know, I feel like it's rigged.
A democracy is like Tinkerbell. If people don't believe in it, it dies.
David Litt is a former speechwriter for President Barack Obama.
American democracy isn't over, but it's under threat in a way it has not been in most Americans' lifetimes.
How important is trust to the functioning of our democracy?
Oh, in a democracy, trust is probably the most precious resource.
Historian Doris Kearns Goodwin says even in some of the country's darkest days, trust was high. 77% of people believed government would do the right thing. It began to slide downward in the 1960s. It has cratered now.
Now, when you take that same poll, it's down to 20%.
What was different then? Consider FDR's speech after Pearl Harbor.
A date which will live in infamy.
FDR said to the people, I have absolute confidence in your ability to hear the worst, but you have to have absolute confidence that the government is keeping nothing from you. If that bond can be created, then the level of trust can go back up again. I think this huge vote we're seeing is the beginning of that process of rebuilding the trust and mobilization of the spirit of the American people. I gotta believe that, I do.
First steps. Cynthia McFadden, NBC News.
In a moment, I'll have some final thoughts on this pivotal moment. Finally tonight, at about this time tomorrow evening, the first polls in the 2020 election will begin to close. If that just gave you a knot in your stomach, it's okay. Me too. Let's face it, this campaign has often felt like a powder keg with a fuse burning down to November 3rd. And it's allowed our minds to sometimes drift into dark places about potential for violence and whether the outcome will be accepted. This is a deep breath moment. We will need all of our collective patience and critical thinking skills tomorrow. Yes, democracy is messy, but we've got to let it work. If not for ourselves, then for our children, who you know are watching us. That's Nightly News for this Monday. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.